My name is Sheila Corona. Welcome to Sassy Seer Sheila and New Light Streaming Love, as this will be seen on both channels. Just like my last recording um, about the new cage, this one too, I cannot unsee uh, what has been directed into my field today. This one is When the Storm Arrives by Jason Gray. And he wrote this on June the 14th, 2026. Today is June the 29th. This morning, before I did anything else, my inner guidance uh, pinged me when I saw a video, which means I was to watch it, about Hurricane Hugo back in 1989. Now, I lived in Charleston, South Carolina during Hurricane Hugo, and I've spoken about that on this channel a time or two. And so I watched it. And so, and again, I can't unsee what I'm being asked to see here. And so I'm going to put it on the record here. Again, today is June the 29th, 2026. Hurricane season begins June the 3rd, I believe it is. Every June, it begins hurricane season. And it runs to November 1st. Now, I grew up in Florida, so I've been through many hurricanes. And when Hugo came through, I was like, we got this, no problem. Personally, I believe that Hugo was the very first engineered storm. I got nothing to prove that, but that's just my feel of it. It was the first completely engineered and steered storm ever. And part of the reason I feel that, again, came for me again this morning when I watched that video. The sheer size of it, the fact that there were so many firsts involving it. That video drove it home again. How many firsts, including the fact that it affected folks here in North Carolina, clearly 200 miles inland. Folks here were inundated, very similarly to what happened with Hurricane Helene, and which is another one that I feel has been steered and engineered. So and the way this goes for me with recording Jason's work is that I look at what I have been pinged already that I am to record, and my guidance will tell me. I'll just get that feeling inside, and this one was to be next. So, without further ado, When the Storm Arrives by Jason Gray. There is a profound difference between a philosophy that sounds good when life is calm and a way of living that continues to work when everything begins falling apart. Anyone can speak of faith on a sunny day. Anyone can speak of hope when the future appears secure. Anyone can speak of peace when there is no conflict, no uncertainty, and no loss standing at the door. The true measure of any spiritual path is not how it performs during comfort. The true measure is how it performs during collapse. And now, I also want to go on record now here as saying I believe with all of me that I was meant to experience that storm in Charleston for a lot of different reasons, but partially exactly what this is saying here. The true measure of any spiritual path is not how it performs during comfort. The true measure is how it performs during collapse. When the storm arrives, when the ground shifts beneath your feet, when life refuses to follow the script you imagined, when everything you thought was certain suddenly becomes uncertain. That is where the real test begins, when life changes the terms. Most people unconsciously believe that stability is permanent. We create plans, we establish routines, we build identities around careers, relationships, health, possessions, and expectations. We assume tomorrow will resemble today. Then life reminds us that nothing is guaranteed. A phone call arrives, a diagnosis appears, a relationship changes, a job disappears, a loved one suffers, a door closes, a dream dissolves, and suddenly the future we imagined no longer exists. Pardon me. In those moments, we are confronted with a difficult truth. Life was never asking us to control reality. Life was asking us to learn how to walk through reality. There is a difference. One approach depends upon circumstances. The other depends upon character. One collapses when conditions change. The other grows stronger because of change. The great illusion of control. Much of human suffering comes from the belief that we should be able to arrange life according to our preferences. We want certainty, predictability, security, control. Reality has never operated according to our demands. The seasons change, people change, bodies change, circumstances change, entire worlds change. The river of existence never stops moving. The problem is not that life changes. The problem is that we often resist the fact that it does. We fight reality. We argue with reality. We demand that reality becomes something other than what it is, and in so doing, we multiply our suffering. Growth begins when we stop fighting what already exists. Acceptance is not surrender. Acceptance is clarity. It is seeing reality exactly as it is and deciding to move forward anyway. The strength discovered in adversity. And the truth is, it's not like you got any choice. So the strength discovered in adversity. One of the great paradoxes of life is that many of our deepest strengths are invisible until they are required. We do not know our resilience until hardship arrives. We do not know our courage until fear appears. We do not know our patience until circumstances test it. We do not know our faith until uncertainty surrounds us. The storm reveals what comfort conceals. Adversity acts as a mirror. It shows us who we have become. It shows us where we still need to grow. It reveals weaknesses. It also reveals strengths we never knew existed. Many people spend years searching for themselves. Then a crisis arrives, and suddenly they discover capacities they never imagined they possessed. Strength, perseverance, compassion, humility, wisdom, endurance. These qualities are rarely developed in comfort. These qualities are forged in difficulty, becoming a light in dark times. One of the most remarkable things about human beings is that even while carrying our own burdens, we retain the ability to help others. Some of the most inspiring people are not those who avoided suffering. They are those who continued serving despite suffering. They continued showing up. They continued listening. They continued encouraging, continued helping, continued loving. Not because life was easy, but because they understood that pain does not have to make us smaller. Pain can make us deeper. When we help another person during our own hardship, something extraordinary happens. We stop becoming prisoners of our circumstances. We become participants in something larger than ourselves. And often, in helping others find hope, we rediscover our own. The unfolding of life. There comes a point where we stop asking life to be different and begin asking ourselves how we can meet life differently. This changes everything. The challenge remains, the loss remains, the uncertainty remains, but our relationship to those things transforms. Instead of resisting every difficulty, we learn from it. Instead of demanding certainty, we develop trust. Instead of becoming overwhelmed, we become present. Instead of asking, why is this happening? We begin asking, what is this teaching me? And gradually, life becomes less of a battle and more of a journey. Not because the road becomes easier, but because we become stronger. We become wiser. We become more capable of walking through uncertainty with grace. The design that works. The greatest spiritual principles are not theories. They are tools. Tools designed for real life, for loss, for disappointment, for fear, for heartbreak, for uncertainty, for those movements when the world seems to be collapsing around us. A true design for living is not possible. No, sorry. A true design for living is not proven during success. It is proven during adversity. When the storm arrives and you continue walking. When the darkness appears and you continue trusting. When the future becomes unclear and you continue moving forward. When life becomes difficult and you refuse to become bitter. That is where the wisdom becomes real. That is where growth becomes visible. That is where character is formed. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson of all. The goal is not to create a life without storms. The goal is to become the kind of person who can walk through storms without losing sight of the light. The storm will pass. The circumstances will change. the chapter will end, but the strength you develop while walking through it will remain. And that strength becomes part of who you are forever. Jason Gray. Well, that's true. And I learned so very much through my experience of Hurricane Hugo back in 1989. I was a young single parent, and I lived for 3 full months with no water and no power, and I had to be at work every single day. There was no school, and yeah, it was a struggle, but I am one resourceful somebody and quite resilient as well. And so is the rest of humanity, honestly. I've said many times what my experience was there. Humanity was neighbor helping neighbor. It was not a horrific shit show like so many people think it could be or would be. So I'd love to hear what you think. I have a feeling my consciousness and all of my surroundings is preparing me for perhaps another arrival of another storm. And things are not at all what they appear. And you know that's okay, because no matter what happens, I know that I will persevere through it. So, what do you think? In the comments below or in my inbox, consciousconversationscentral@gmail.com. Until we meet again, my friends, be well.